Right, yes. So I'm joined from the Scarf Bagara War podcast boys. Very, very successful series, Stockport County fans, and we're going to talk about the impact of football, of COVID on non-league football, particularly the National League, and the implications for going up into the Football League. Which, if you're not a fan of a non-league team, it's quite hard to get your head around just how important it is and what a big difference. I think if you're a fan of a Championship club, the idea that you get into the Premier League is probably a very big deal. But I can tell you, having been a Championship club not that long ago, relatively speaking, getting back into the Football League is way, way, way more important in terms of how you feel about yourselves, your status as a football club, and the financial implications, because non-league football, you just don't get any money. In league football, you do. So it's a huge deal. The quick version of events is that the National League voted to stop the season, and they were going to come upon a way of deciding, well, what they're going to do about it once the Football League had made their mind up. And where we're at is the Football League haven't made their mind up. League Two have made it absolutely clear, I think 20 votes to 4, that they do not want to carry on playing. They cannot afford to continue the season because of the costs involved with testing and everything else that goes on. It's talking about £250,000 each club to be able to play out the last 4 or 5 home games of the season. Each club. It's just a non-starter. But of course, very controversially, they said that we'll promote some clubs into League One, but we're not relegating anybody into non-league, and that kind of suggests they're not bringing anybody up.
You can't have your cake and eat it, though, can you?
Well, I can, you know. So we'll start with first things first. How do we feel? How do you feel about the decision to stop playing in terms of our division, which is the National League?
I'll dive in, but only to sort of, I might be sort of showing myself up here. It's possibly because of everything else that's going on in the world. I can't get myself worked up about it one way or the other. I genuinely, football is not secondary. It's thirdly, fourthly, whatever you want to. It's just nowhere near the front of my list of priorities.
Yeah.
However, obviously, you've got an opinion. My initial gut instinct when we ground to a halt was, let's ride this out and then try and finish the season in whatever way that might be. Whether it's doing a little mini tournament in the middle of July or August to finish it off, whether it's delaying it and then starting next season late because the Qatar World Cup gives us that window of opportunity to run a calendar year season almost.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about the finances of clubs. I have to take them on, exactly as you've just outlined, Dave, that it is going to absolutely screw up a number of clubs if we don't make a decision and end things now, if that's the way that they can see the way through, financially speaking. So I suppose in that sense, given that I don't really mind, I don't really care, football at the moment is not at the forefront of my thoughts, I would say if the clubs are saying that the best way for us to try and survive this financially is to say it ends, then I'll go with that.
Yeah, okay. And obviously we're in the playoffs, and we've just recruited some very strong players because we've got a new owner who's got a few quid. We went from looking like we had no chance whatsoever of being promoted to actually having a very good chance indeed. So, there is a cost to us in terms of opportunity to get promoted into the Football League. We've discussed how important that is. So you, Dave, are saying that great, yeah, but there's more important things.
Absolutely. If they somehow said we're going to come up with a league table and we'll do it on weighted points per game or points per game, and the weighted element actually saw us, I don't know if it actually will in mathematical terms. I know points per game won't see us into the playoffs, but weighted might, whatever. If that got us into the playoffs and we're going to run a playoff tournament and it's going to happen towards the end of June, and whatever happens in terms of winning that tournament will get promoted, then yeah, clearly I'll be interested because I'm a fan and I want us to see us go up.
Yeah, of course.
But at the same time, it does seem a really, really convoluted and artificial way of trying to finish something and trying to get a result out of something that really... Should we try and be forcing a result in that way? Or should we just be saying, look, let's write this season off and start again whenever we can, whether that is a calendar year starting next January or not?
Sure. So, Russ, what do you think?
As long the first and foremost is this COVID thing. It's about the lives, saving the lives. So football is secondary. That there's no question about that. So that's my first. That's my first sort of priority. That's my first thought. My second one is, well, we're sorted. We've got a good future. I don't mind us not going up this season. It doesn't really matter to me. I mean, my opinion would be absolutely different if we were at the bottom of the league or at the top of the league, and we were playing for something. It's a bit less than that because we're just around the playoff place. So I think as Stockport County fans, and as Stockport County fans, we are probably the luckiest people at the moment with this, because we can just sit fat, dumb, and happy, knowing that it's sorted. We can let the adults, if you like, make the decisions. And if you're healthy, that's the other thing. Then there's two reasons to be happy, isn't there?
No. For
the rest of it, it's an absolute clusterfuck. I have no idea. You can take. I listened to some of your first podcasts with Jamie, Dave, and I think you're doing a really good job picking the bones out of it, because that is a big task. You're going to have conflicting opinions. You're going to have argument, counter argument. It's going to be like it's going to be as bad as Brexit in terms of how complicated it is.
Yeah.
And having all these things to unpick. And I'm just glad it's not me that's having to make these big decisions, because I don't know what to do. Germany have just doing theirs behind closed doors, aren't they? Which is great. I do side on this thing about morale, but not at the cost of lives. So find a way,
The morale question is, there's no doubt about it. A lot of people in this country would be in a lot happier place if the football was on. There's no question about that. But it's a version of football, behind closed doors, no fans, sterile, substitutes sat 6 feet away from each other with face masks on, and you just think, well, I've got to say, at some point, that's going to be like, fuck this.
Yeah, but that's not long term, and I've seen people on my Facebook feed and on my Twitter feed saying, if this is the future of football, then I don't want it. And I'm thinking, I think it's not the future of football. It's a short term measure to get over what could be an administration nightmare and a financial nightmare for clubs. Yeah. So it's as long as it is short term, I think it's a means to an end.
Do you think there's people sat? Do they think there's people sat in the stand watching what's going on, thinking, "Do you know what? Look at this. This could be the future of football."
It's bonkers, yeah. I
think I said that, Dave. Just to sort of clarify in my mind, I said on the Scaff Bagara War podcast that there are 4 options. When the shit hit the fan, there were 4 options. Option was void the season. Option 1. Option 2, take the table as is and make it the final table. Option 3, points per game or weighted points per game. Option 4, finish whenever. And it's just a question of putting those into the order that you think is the best order, but is also practical. Yeah. Because finish the season whenever. Well, what happens if there's a second wave and we cannot actually start playing competitive football till this time next year? Do we carry on playing 2019-2020 season into 2022, which is that's what it'd be?
Give it another month and a half, and maybe 1,400. In the EFL, 1,400 players out of contract.
Yeah,
the teams that come back, when it does come back, and in my mind, that's maybe April next year. It sounds awful, doesn't it? But it is. The teams that come back, they'll bear no relation to the teams that ended in January and February. None whatsoever. There'll be managers. There's a couple of managers gone today, aren't there? Clubs can't afford to keep the managers on.
So it's not the same season, effectively, is what you're saying, isn't it?
It's not. So, people talk about sporting integrity, and there just isn't any.
I think that's the point. I think that in terms of ordering those 4 outcomes, I think initially my order would be finish the season wherever at the top.
Yeah.
I think as time goes on and as circumstances dictate, it's moving down. And now I think it's probably at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I think write the season off or come up with a table of however you do it. I wouldn't say table as is, because that's just silly. You either write the season off or points per game, finish the table, move on into the next season. There, and those are my 2 options now, I suppose, thinking about it through. Finish the season wherever I don't think is practical, unless you can do it in the month of June behind closed doors.
Yeah, but what you're talking about clubs who are literally, they are screwed now.
Yeah.
You never mind spending any more money. There's dozens of football clubs, and particularly in the Championship, who are trading insolvently. There's no ifs or buts about it. Yeah. And this hanging on for the authorities to make a decision is going to not just kill them but finish them off.
And ironically, the factor that's probably most prevalent in this, or most important in this, is the fact that football is run so badly anyway. Yeah. Because you might make a case for football is so important to the national psyche that we need to get football back. And the points Russ made earlier and you made earlier about morale is absolutely dead right. There are some people for whom football is the most important thing in their lives. And there are a lot of people like that. There are lots of people for whom football is a significant part of their lives. So you could potentially, it sounds outlandish, but let's just, for the sake of argument, thought experiment, you could say the government have bailed out this, they've bailed out the other. Could the government bail out football? Can you imagine if anybody suggested that with the money that's in football?
Yeah.
So the fact that football has been run in such a ridiculously unbalanced way, there's so much money in football, it's embarrassing, but it's all focused at the top and focused in a couple of particular clubs, that any kind of intervention to help those clubs will be met with, fuck off, you've got enough money. What on earth are you saying you haven't got money for? Look at the money that's in there. So I think you're right. I think it could end up with a lot of clubs not being here this time next year.
No. So I've got experience of this, and to preserve the club, to stop them from going into, first of all, administration, and I think very quickly liquidation, because whilst there will be lots of vultures circling at the moment looking to pick clubs up for £1, there'll also be lots of clubs available for £1 to choose from, and they'll run out of buyers. So I think we could see some clubs not just fall into administration, but disappear. And where I think if I was in charge of a football club right now, I would say our priority is to be here when football comes back. So, whatever decisions we make, it must start with, does this action, does this decision mean that when it comes back, say whether that's October, January, April, whenever, does that mean that we're going to be here and in some kind of shape to be able to compete? And if you can do that, then I think you'll have been a good owner.
And I'll just put another little point in that I think, again, I'll go back to what we talked about on the podcast. When football comes back, it's going to be so good. Comes back properly. Yeah. It's going to be so good that I reckon we'll see record attendances. I reckon, County could be getting 8,000-9,000 because people will be desperate to go and watch football again. So if clubs can get to that other side of that massive chasm at the moment that we're in, they'll be set fair to really capitalise on the massive enthusiasm there'll be. Yeah. It's not just football; it's live sport generally. I mean, I had tickets for the Test match this year, and they've gone, and I'm desperate. I'm thinking this is horrendous. I want to see live sport. I want to see County. I want to see England play cricket. I want to see whatever. And there's going to be so much desperation and so much enthusiasm for live sport on the other side of this that clubs that, if they can get to it, can hopefully capitalise and thrive.
I agree with you. Russ, what do you think about, whenever they talk about somebody coming up, and obviously we've got the situation with Bury having gone, so even if they don't relegate anybody from League Two, which I don't think they're going to, I think they've given Stephen, as it looks like, a reprieve, although Macclesfield are doing everything they can, losing points left, right and centre, aren't they, at the moment, with various fines and stuff. But everybody goes, well, you know, there's a space there. Bury's gone. Barrow could come up, and it's like, well, you know, I understand the argument for Liverpool, 25 points clear or whatever. But Barrow are 4 points clear, and they've got to play the two teams that are directly behind them. And it's emotionally, I do feel like Barrow got shut on many years ago. And I think if there was an emotional pick, give it Barrow, let them go up. I think actually there's a bit of a karma thing there. But in terms of, will Barrow have earned it? Have they, Russ?
No, I don't think they have. I think there's too much to play. But I think if whatever happens, I think you've got to be consistent. So if they are doing promotions and relegations, that's got to go throughout. And then where does that stop? We'll come back to what we discussed on the podcast. Chorley and Fylde. I think a lot of county fans want them to go down. Both of those because of the history we've got with them. So it's a real tough one. Yeah, Liverpool. I think Scottish Premier League. They points per game their season today, didn't they? So awarded Celtic with the title. They were 13 points clear, I think, having played a game more. So they did points per game.
Now the thing with that though, Russ, is it's hard to argue against Celtic.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like it's hard to argue against Liverpool.
But they've relegated Hearts.
I know they have, yes.
And to relegate a team based on, points per game or whatever, we all know every single season somebody gets out of it with a late run. It's terrible. It's a dreadful thing to do.
Yes, I know. But I suppose if it's a really difficult one. I suppose, but if you're consistent with it and you say that's what we're going to do, then there's no you can almost accept your fate, can't you? If they say it's points per game in one division and then it's capped at another and it's just void the season now in another, I don't see the sense in that. I really don't.
That's why right from the word go I've been null and void everything. Everyone starts next season where they started this, and that's it. It's the same for everybody. And I know that's not perfect, and I know that there'll be a lot of people upset with that, but I genuinely think it's the easiest to administer. And I think when it comes to people getting lawyers involved, Judge is going to sit there and think, there's been a global pandemic. What do you mean you've been denied an opportunity by a football administrator? There's a global pandemic. There's no cure for it, you knobhead. No, I think you're not having any money.
I think you're right, Dave. And I think when you first started talking about this, and obviously before you moved into podcasting it was talked about on the message boards, and I sort of was more inclined to agree with the people who said we need to finish whatever, as I said earlier. And I thought your position then was not outlandish, but slightly, out there. As time goes on, I can certainly see what you mean, because Hearts lawyers are going to be all over this like a rash. Barrow's lawyers, if another team gets promotion and relegation based on points per game, say in the League Two, then why shouldn't Barrow's lawyers say, hang on a minute, we're trying to join your league. Why shouldn't we be subject to the same rules? So it does seem to, with all that said, it seems to be, for me, voiding the fuck out of everything and starting again when we can. And it's a calendar season from, say, February to November and then a World Cup next year might be the best way of doing it.
Definitely, 100%. Right, so League Two have had this thing. There's been a bit of talk about Port Vale, and we've got a history of Port Vale, on and off the pitch, and but they took a quite altruistic position. They like us were kind of playoffs or edge of the playoffs, and they were absolutely going to vote for continuing. But when they spoke to the other club owners, they realised just how many of them are potentially going to go under, and switched the vote and voted with the majority. Our league voted in a similar way. That there was only 4 teams voted for to carry on, and I believe that's us, Barrow, Notts County, and one other. I can't remember it is, but they declared it. So, if there is to be a team promoted, should it only come from those who voted to carry on?
It's a tricky one for me. I would say no, because I don't know. Because if there's a team promoted, it's not on the basis of the vote, is it? It's on the basis of some executive decision. Because if only took 4 teams vote to carry on, it's not going to carry on. If you take a democratic view of it, I don't know. It's an interesting point.
So let me get this right. That's suggesting that, say, there's 4 teams that vote to carry on. What, they play a mini tournament to see who gets promoted?
You know where I stand. But if they are going to promote one of the teams, and we can't say that's Barrow, we can't just jump to Barrow for what we've discussed. But if they do say, well, one of the teams at the top end of the National League is going to come into the Football League, then if you voted to end the season, should you then be included in the list of clubs that are eligible to go up? Or should it be restricted to just those 4? It's like the moral maze, this, isn't it?
Yeah. Labyrinth. Yeah, it's a really good question, and not one that I would have even conceived in my dreams, to be honest. But no, I don't think they should. Do I think they should? I'd be surprised if the top 11 or the top 11, those that had an inkling chance of going up, voted to void it.
Well, 7 of them did.
I know, and I'm surprised at that. I really am. Yeah. I'm not surprised.
It's got to have been financially based, hasn't it?
That's it, yeah. It's purely pragmatic. You know, it's like mothball the club, furlough players, let all the contracts run down, lay everybody off that I'm afraid you can't furlough for whatever reason, and work out how much it's going to cost you each month just to let the club not collapse, and then find that money, put it together, and be around however many multiples of that monthly figure it is. And for most non-league clubs, because the cost bases are lower, it's actually easier to do that. You know, most of the players will be out of contract now from non-league. They've finished. All the players that have gone back to their loan clubs and all that sort of stuff. So, it's a lot easier to do it, I think. So it was an easier decision. The interesting one's going to be League One, I think. Darren McAntony, who I do admire, but him and his 5 bunch of rebels who are threatening to sue everybody. I think that's going to be the really interesting one. But right, so I think what we've agreed on is that it's a clusterfuck. There's no easy option. Maybe voiding it's the cleanest, not necessarily the best. Well, but
is it the cleanest though? Because you're going to have those clubs that they're the top, aren't you? I mean, the voiding the season is only good for those that are threatened with relegation.
Yeah, but if you haven't achieved anything, so if you haven't achieved winning the league, or if you haven't achieved promotion, or you haven't achieved relegation, and the season's only 3/4 done, then you're not over the line, are you? No, but you're not giving up anything because you haven't actually got it yet.
Well, you're giving up 3/4 of a season of hard work and having all that. There's a lot goes into. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys this, but there's a lot goes into having a team or a squad of players that can win something.
Of course,
you don't want to give that up lightly.
I suppose at the risk of bringing war analogies into this, because that's been done by other people quite a lot already. The Second World War started after about 4 games, I think, of the season, because it was September 1939. If the Second World War had started in February or March 1940, that season would have been voided. Now, as I say, I don't want to use the analogy of this being like a war, but in many ways it is.
The country's in a warlike state, isn't it?
Everything. I mean, it's unprecedented. Yeah. Even during the Second World War, people weren't locked into their homes, told to stay at home no matter what. You're told to turn the light out, and obviously people, it was different because death was raining from the sky. But there are similarities in the sense that a huge seismic event has taken place partway through a football season, and as a result, that football season has been voided.
Yeah.
Second World War, it happened after about 4 or 5 games. this time, if it happens, it's happened after 3/4 of the games. But there is a case for saying, because of the fact that we can't have some teams having promotion and relegation and not others because they're feeding to each other's leagues, and we'll end up with leagues of different sizes, because we can't relegate people because they would be on our case in the law courts. There's a very strong argument for saying it's not good. It's funny in the case of Liverpool not winning the league, but it's not good in lots of other cases. We're going to have to just void everything and start again when we can.
As somebody on Twitter said to me, you cannot be 75% pregnant, but you can still be fucked.
What a good place to end.
Right, thanks a lot, fellas. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Dave.
See
See ya.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.